Hey guys, it's Sax Productions 101 here with my next deck reveal and review. This is the brand new Karnival Dose, the next deck in the Karnival series. So let's get this deck on open and show you some of my ratings, thoughts, feelings, and some specs about this deck in particular. So let's look at the actual outside of the box here. If you check it out, you can see it's like someone took a spray paint in a stencil, kinda sorta, and sprayed a dot on the actual box, and that's what the back looks like. And then it's dripping, and there's splatters around it and whatnot, and it resembles a face. And it has a nose, two eyes, and a mouth. And there's duct tape on the eyes, and there's duct tape, and the mouth is also stitched over. I don't exactly know what this means, but it's an interesting interpretation that Big Blind Media has put on a deck that I have seen from them. And on the top you have two more, and the seal is black. On the side it says Made in the USA, and on the other side it says Brought to you by Big Blind Media Incorporation.com. And it's a very simple outer box design. On the bottom you have some website information, copyright information, and a Jack of Clubs barcode reveal. So let's get this deck on open. So as you guys can see, this deck is a lot different from what you would normally see from the Karnival series, which is more of skulls and whatnot from the promo card here. We have a promo card here, and on the back of that it says you will choose the 4 of clubs force card. Then on here we have the 2 jokers, and then we have a double backer card. So let's get into the jokers a little bit. The jokers, classic Karnival series decks, some skulls. This one has a top hat, but this one doesn't, but it has an ace of hearts reveal where the hat should be, and it's just basically 2 skull guys and their nice little tuxes and ties and or their little suits and whatnot. And then you see the back design on the actual cards. It's a little bit different from the actual design on the box, just because it's faded and it's more rustic looking than it would appear to be on the box. It looks a lot older inside the deck. And as you guys can already see, this is a one-way deck. And if you don't know what that means, it means all the cards, the design is not a mirrored image or the same image across a line, so you can like flip the cards over. It looks awkward because the next card underneath it may be a different direction, and it just looks awkward and it doesn't appeal when you're performing with it. And that's actually one of the things I do not like about this deck, is that it is a one-way deck, and you have to be careful about what you do with it to make sure your cards don't all get mixed up on the inside. So let's check out the Ace of Spades. Now, the Ace of Spades is very interesting. It's actually very simple, but yet unique to this deck. It says Karnival Dose at the bottom. You have your spade and a nice design around it. You have your skeletons, classic Karnival, and stuff like that. It's very rustic and old looking, and I didn't expect that actually out of this deck, just looking from the actual box itself. Now we're going to check out the Queen, King, and the Jack of Spades. We're going to check out some of the court cards, and these court cards are actually, they're very nice looking and they appeal very nicely. Just like the actual back design, there is duct tape over the eyes and they're faded and they're rustic looking, and I actually really like these court cards. They did a really good job with the actual appeal that this gives off throughout the deck. Now, another thing I don't like about this deck, as we're just continuing talking about some of the cards, I do not like the aces, which we have here. Now, if you see and look at the aces, they're all exactly the same. And even if we look back to the Ace of Spades, all the aces are the same. There's no difference distinguishing the Ace of Spades, like the Ace of Spades, from the rest of the aces. And that is one thing I do not like about this deck. The aces are all the same, and they're not distinguishable from one another because they all say Carnival Dose and they all have the same exact background imaging around it. And if we take a look inside the actual deck, you can actually see that if I pulled out, let's see, the 8 of clubs and the 8 of hearts, if we pulled those out, the actual cards themselves have a design behind the actual like pips and the hearts and the clubs, spades, diamonds, whatever it is, but they weren't clever enough to figure out 2 different images to set behind the actual things because they're exactly the same image as you can see behind the actual hearts and clubs. And that is, again, another thing I do not like about this deck, because Big Blind Media is a clever corporation, and they should have been able to come up with something a little bit different to put on the backs of cards. For example, there's the 10 of hearts and there is the 10 of diamonds. And I think that if any company is capable of it, Big Blind Media would be that company. I wasn't too impressed with this deck. It handles nicely, it fans good, it ribbon spreads nicely. It does everything well, except it's a one-way deck, and there's certain features about it that aren't very clever that actually would increase the aesthetic appeal of the deck to others and want them to buy it more or perform with it more, etc. Because there's certain things you can't do with this deck because of the one-way and whatnot. And I don't think that the rustic look of like the actual cards fits with the design that these cards have on them with the dose and whatnot. I just don't think the actual, I guess, oldness looking of the cards, how like some of the court cards are scratched or faded, I don't think it exactly appeals correctly with the actual deck. Some things I do like about the deck is the actual back design itself was a very clever idea. It was different, something I haven't seen before, and innovative, except it's one way, and most people don't like that. So let's get into my ratings. So the overall deck of cards, I would have to give a 3 out of 5. It's pretty mediocre. It's not awesome, but it definitely doesn't suck. It handles very nicely, and it feels good, and you can roll with it, except for the fact that it's one way. So the thickness and the secure feeling of these cards are really thin, but that actually comes with the territory with the Carnival decks, because most of the cards on the Carnival decks are thin, but they do handle nicely. The air cushion meshes well, so I would have to give the thickness and secure feeling of cards a 3 out of 5. Now the overall look of the deck. The deck looks pretty nice. The design itself is very cool, I have to admit. Its flaws is that it's one way, and I don't think the rustic feel meshes so well with the actual deck of cards. I don't think that was the best choice for this actual back design, incorporating it all together. So the overall look of these cards, I would have to give a 3 out of 5. Now for the handling and feel of these cards actually handle pretty decently. They fan okay. They look fine. And they ribbon spread well and stuff like that. They shuffle well. They look nice, except I keep reiterating the fact that they are one-way cards, and most people do not like that. So the overall deck of cards, I would have to give a 2.5 out of 5. I just don't really like the actual one-way of the cards, and I do not like the fact that they look kind of rustic when the actual box would lead you to think something else about them. So if you'd like to pick up a deck of these cards, there'll be a link in the description box down there. So thank you guys so much for watching, and comment, rate, and subscribe.